Hello there, Derek. Pleased to meet you at last.
Yeah, same here. How are you today?
Yeah, doing fine for a young bloke. Yeah. We're going through a bit of a heat wave at present, but that's normal for this time of the year.
I really appreciate you taking the time because I'm loving it.
It's a pleasure. Now, I knew John Mace. Him and I were very good friends, and anything I can do to help achieve what he wanted to achieve, I'm more than willing.
I would love to hear your insight, how you got into it, and then I'm sure I got a list of questions. But if you wanted to start off with how did you find fun and your journey on getting there a little bit?
Well, John did the finding, but John and I did some similar study, like to do counselling, and like I personally, way back, just had a regular bit of counselling that really helped me. And I remember saying to myself at the end of the session, "Oh, I would love to be able to do that," you know. And I was just a regular tradesman at that time. This is way back in the '60s. And John Mace did some similar things, and we met up probably about '69, I think it was. And we were both thrilled with this, and we want to do this. And we came to a conclusion a little later that something was missing, because we could fix people and make them happy, but the same problem would come back, say a month or two later, or a week or a month or two later. And he kept saying, "We haven't found it all. Something's missing." So that started a quest for him and I. And so that's how it got. He did some study in Dallas, Texas, in that '68, '69. No, pardon me. When did he go? Now I'm getting confused. No, and he went over in the early '90s, and he came home and told me about it. So I finished up going over and doing. We thought we were finding something about how to help people with drug problem, and when I came home, I went back to Perth to see him. I'm on the east coast of Australia. John Mace was on the west, where I used to live, and. So I was running some of the latest stuff on him, like processing him on some of the latest stuff. And when that was happening, as he mentioned, if you've read the book, that's when he had the big realization. I will never forget the look on his face. And he said, "I found it. I found what's missing. Let me do this on you." And then we changed seats, from practitioner to client. And that's where it all got going, Derek. And he explained in the book about the mind, and that's when he realized the business about the mind. And I have some thoughts on that. What he really found to me is that everything really, in my opinion, everything really important in our life, we can't see. All the real powerful stuff is not seeable. But what he discovered was, when you use your attention and get guided, and somebody helps you and holds you there, and you keep your attention on negative energies, that's when those images pop up. And that's when you keep your attention on it, then you can do something with it. I call it, it's just like computer. Then you can help the client delete the bad feeling. When it's gone, it won't come back. You might think about it, but it doesn't have any more effect on you. So, it's been a wonderful trip, and probably the best thing I've ever done in my life. So it's like, the way I see it is, when we have these things, if you've read the book, I'm glad, because now you understand. It's like, when we have these things, the more often those feelings come back, the more often those feelings come back, the stronger they get. We're actually, like John said in the book, we're actually charging them up like a car charging a battery up. But the beautiful part is, when we process them, I suddenly realized one day, when you process them, like the way I explained it to a client is, I said, if somebody decides that they're not good enough or something in life, and plenty of people have decided that, they'll give that some energy. And the more times it happens in life, the more energy it gets. And then who's running their life after a while? Them or that? Okay? So the beautiful part to me is, when this is processed with the Mace method, all this energy comes back to the positive side, and that side just disappears. It's like that's what John explains as getting the real self, getting yourself back again. So, so if you've got any questions or anything else.
So I got quite a few, and I think you had a great recap of the idea, because the concept of, I think what you said about how we are, a lot of the best things of us we cannot see, and energy
Exactly.
is one of the most powerful things as part of our lives, and we don't give it enough credit, especially with most of modern science. It's not really studied or talked about as much, other than magnetism and electricity. But our own sort of energy is not there. And the way that you discuss how you don't get rid of the memories, they're still there, but you take what you guys suggest in the book is like the energy ridge. That intense energy is no longer there. And that you found permanent. I mean, you've been doing this for quite a few years. You found permanent dissolution of that power energy, correct? Of that energy ridge.
Yep. Exactly. Well, that's what John said. Like, we create all our own things. Nobody else can. I can't make you sad. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't make me sad. It'll be my reaction to something you've done, but I actually create the feeling. And like John said, the only person in the world who can create it is the client. Can discreate it because it's their own creation. But with a bit of guidance and a bit of assistance, and you hold the person's attention on what they're doing, and then they can do it. It's like facing a problem while it melts away. That's the way I like to explain it to, I've done a lot of work on children and had a lot of success. And, I said, if you keep your attention on that, when it goes, I said, how do you feel? And, oh, I feel great. That's gone, A quick example comes to mind, if I might tell you.
Please.
I was working on a little girl one day. She was probably about 7 or 8. It's a few years ago now. And we go through like when we get into rapport with the children. I wrote all the how to handle children for the how we train the other practitioners now. It was my big love. However, we got the get into rapport with the children and then say, how do you get on with your mum? Oh, very good. Or how do you get on with your dad? Or how do you get on with your teacher? And you find areas where they got bad feelings, then you help them discreate it. But this little girl, when I got to her father, she got the most frightened look on her face. She said, oh, I'm frightened of my dad. And I thought, oh, the poor little girl. So I said, okay, we found something, close your eyes. And we did the process and she got the feeling and we just created the feeling. I think we did a couple of feelings. And then when she'd finished, she was looking great. I said, how do you feel about your dad now? And she looked at me like I was stupid. And she said, I love my dad. Nearly knocked me off the chair. That took about 10 minutes. Had that gone forward with her in her life, what difference could that have made? That's the thing I like to look at. It's like you drop the baggage and then you just handle life.
It's so fast too. The fact that it happens so quickly. And I think the biggest things is that you don't have to replay any trauma. You're not asking them to relive it or to put that memory back in. That's probably the most incredible thing about the whole method for me. It was that you can ability to change it without reliving it. That's magic. Yep. It's a disbelief until I tried it myself, and I had it done to me, where I was like, I couldn't believe it. I even read, I think you wrote an intro, and you couldn't believe it as well until you said, or you had to, until you feel it or understand it. The concept is it just seems too simple.
Oh no, like children have been my big love. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell you things. I had a little boy once. His mum and dad had broken up, and his grandma brought him, and we handled a whole bunch of feelings and things on him, and he brightened up and I still remember he told me he liked golf and his grandma was late picking him up. Like, she left him and went off while we did the work. So him and I were out in the front lawn chipping golf balls when she came back. And I said to Grandma, bring him back in a month or so. If you're ever going past someone, make sure he's okay, And he was good as gold. So when I got him back, he was feeling as good as gold, just feeling absolutely great. And I remember after the session, he was feeling sad and angry. And I remember checking is that you now feeling sad? He stood up. I used to do them at the kitchen table, Derek, so I wouldn't take them in the office. It was more relaxed for children. Right. And he stood up and looked at me and said, John, can't you see? I'm not angry or sad anymore. Like, he jumped all over me. but it was good. These memories are so good for me. And the little boy came back with his grandma one day. And I said, how you doing? I'm doing this. He said, oh, Dad's got a new girlfriend now. And he said, we go to the beach, she plays football, she does this. I said, you're the luckiest boy I've ever met. He said, what do you mean? I said, you've got 2 mums now. Most kids have only got one. He hit himself in the throat. He said, God, so I do. And the smile, you could get it off his face.
So do you think with the kids, it's even easier to work with? It seems like they might be even more quick to respond they haven't been knocked around very much.
They haven't got the, they haven't got the history we've got, if you follow me. Right. For it's only upsets we're dealing with. Right. See, and they've only had a limited amount. But if you get into rapport with children, and get them talking about themselves and listen to them carefully, and I call it watching their indicators while they're talking, you can tell when something's hurting them. I can see it just by looking at them. But that was training from my earlier counselling, and I know it's great fun, and kids are so honest too. Like the little bloke that said, can't you see I'm not happy, not angry or sad anymore? He asked me what was wrong with me.
I love their honesty. Well, feel free to I love the stories. People really, they connect to hearing stories of their transformations. And I think one of the things for me, we said working with like the veterans and some of them with PTSD, that they are more afraid of talking about the traumas, either between, it could be nothing to even do with the war or something that happened when they're on duty, but the idea of reliving it, they don't want anything to do with that. So when I start telling them that you don't have to, there was a smile just in that fact.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I have a very good example of a young lady that came to me one time. I don't know, she's probably a 20, 25-year-old young woman. And I said, we don't need to know any of your private business. You know, when I told her that, she broke into tears.
Wow.
And I said, oh my God, what have I done? What's wrong? She said, I've told that story every month for the last year. I never want to tell it again. They were tears of joy.
Yeah.
You know, she ran the procedure, she was fixed. You know what I mean? And she was just, but when you think about it, like, as you said, I'm very, very interested in your soldiers, by the way. I can tell you something about that if you're interested, which
please
upset me. We have I don't know if you have, we have what we call here Return Soldiers League, RSL, they call it in Australia. Okay. And they have lots of clubs, and, you know, and I was a member of this club, and, you know, go down there and have dinner and do a bit of dancing and whatever. Anyway, I got to talk to some of the bosses there one day about the soldiers, and I said to them, you know, that there is something that, you know, do you have any soldiers here? And they had plenty of soldiers there that were in bad shape, like return soldiers. I said, I'm not looking for money. I said, for soldiers, I grew up in World War II I was selling newspapers right through World War II as a 10-year-old, and older, and like, I was very connected to the soldiers. So I said, look, I said, look, this method, they don't have to talk about it, they don't have to do this. And I said, I'm willing to do 2 or 3 of them for you to show you what they can do. And they got so excited. They said, would you really? I said, of course. And anyway, so they said, okay, listen, we'll let you know, we'll contact the soldiers. And I never heard from them for about 3 weeks, and they were so excited. I thought, what's gone wrong? So I went back and talked to them. And they said, oh, the psychiatrist won't let them come near you, and they weren't allowed to. And if they did, they'd lose a lot of their benefits. You know, and oh boy, you know, that crushed me, to be quite honest. They just wouldn't let them, you know, because apparently if they stay sick, they can get all their benefits. And I thought, something's wrong somewhere. I don't know what you think of that, Derek, but it shook me up quite a bit.
John, it's quite the same story. It's out here. I do what I do privately, and I fund it myself. And it's one of those things that a lot of these vets, their need to stay on the medication or into the therapy that's never ending. They're not looking for any real fixing. They are looking for continuously going back to the VA. And anytime they wanted to try something new, they would tell their doctor, or they would have, whenever they did, they'd have either negative feedback from them, but they'd have to do it privately. And if they were doing anything that was too outside of what they call their parameters of work or scope of work, they would pretty much say they would lose their benefits if they tried to do other things. So that's why when I heard about this, I thought, even if it's in a private sense, at least we give them access to it. Just give them a chance out there to look at it and see something different. They can at least pursue it. But yeah, the veterans, we call it the VA out here, the Veterans Affairs, which is any military after they're off duty, they will not pay for anything that's in this realm or look into it at all. So
no, it wasn't that. Well, here they weren't even allowed to. They were under psychiatrists, taking their drugs and doing whatever they do, the poor dears. And I have done at least one very early on, one bloke that came back from Afghanistan, and he did wonderful. Right after the session, he said, I'm feeling good, and he said to me, he said, I'll tell you what happened. He said, I was driving in some sort of a vehicle, and my friend in front of me in his vehicle run over a bomb. He said, I was covered with all of his blood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this Jamie that I'm talking about, he was as good as gold. He could go back to the outset, and he said it's still there, but he said it's not hurting anymore. You know what I mean?
That's so powerful.
Yeah, well, he's not resisting it anymore. So he's dealt with the feeling completely instead of trying to hold it away. I give an example to people in sessions that you may be interested. I said, with this feeling, I said, what you resist persists. Do you understand that? And I said, no. I said, if you're feeling sad, do you want to feel that? I said, no. I said, you try to push it away, but even to hold it away from you, you have to keep it there, hold it there while you're resisting it. It just stays there, That's
Yeah.
sometimes when I'm explaining to people before they run the procedure. Well, not now, I only do children now, but, you've, I thought analogies are a good way of getting data over to people.
Absolutely. And I think some of the logic that you guys or John Mace had in his books was so simple. It's irritatingly simple. And I think the concepts are very transferable, just understanding how we are a projector. And like you said, your brain can only have one thought. I mean, I kind of figured that in some other things we were doing where you can't have two emotions even. They talk about in the psychology, you can't be grateful and sad at the same time. You can't project those two different emotions at the same time. But the idea that if you're trying to hold back a trauma or hold back a thought, you're still holding it.
Yeah.
You're still engaged. You're still creating that. It sounds so simple, but to find a way to deal with it.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. It is simple. And John Mace had a favorite saying, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I don't know if you're interested in any lighter moments, but John's very
Please.
direct. He was very direct, and he was a ship's captain for many years. So and some of the other practitioners deal with, some of the people I trained would deal with John. They said, "Oh, he's a bit abrupt and a bit." I said, "He's a ship's captain." I said, "Who questions a ship's captain?"
That's right.
I hope I'm not wasting your time, but I went over to visit him on another occasion. I was staying at his house, and he was storming around the house doing something. His office was right down the end of a passage. I was up the other end with his wife, and I was staying in his house, and and I said to her just for a joke one day, "We're going to have to get rid of that captain identity as soon as we can, now." And she said to me, "Please," he came up the passage. "What are you two talking about?" So I told him, I said, "We're going to deal with that captain identity." "Oh, will you? You wait and see." But he came over that way, but he was the softest person I've ever met. He cared so much about other people that, it didn't seem to fit with the rest of that persona he had.
Yeah, his demeanor. Well, I loved how he brought so many different ideas together. And I think that, being on a ship and having all this time to study and to think without having outside influence had to be a big benefit. Does that kind of add up? I think that was kind of the most beautiful thing for somebody to have all this information and then to just self-reflect. It seemed like he was able to create some very interesting theories.
Yeah, it really, I think, Derek, it happened. He got counseling. He while he was away a lot, his wife, they finished up being divorced, and he had a couple of kids who he never saw for years. And he had his upset too, and he got counseling on that, and he felt a lot better. And him and I both, I did too. I had a whole story too, which I'm, I never met my father till I was 60 years old, my real father. My mother told me how bad he was all my life. She married someone else. I had a great stepfather, but she kept the things that people do. And anytime I played up, she said, "You're being like your father," and I'd never met him. Try not being like someone you'd never met.
That's hard.
So him and I both got these things helped quite a bit, and that's what inspired John to. It was like me. He had the same rough idea. Oh, I'd love to be able to help people like that, and that's what got him on that path.
And then you guys created you worked on making is it the Mace Method University? It's Institute. It's the Institute, correct?
Yeah. The Causalism Institute.
Okay. And then did you guys have any sort of luck with trying to get into mental health at all? Was there any psychologists starting to take on board? I do see some Mace members, a couple in the United States, not that many, but in Australia, you definitely have a pretty good amount of practitioners.
Oh, yeah.
How has it been trying to break into mental health to help people?
No, well, it's like, I hope I'm not being rude, but John didn't call it mental health. He said, we've got a body, we've got a mind, and we've got a spirit, and that spirit, he said, we are energy. That's what you are, a unit of energy. You've got a body and you play games, and that's what you do. But, and you think, but it's you, the person. That's what he said, that's what we're dealing with. See, when someone closes their eyes, they're not using their physical things. They're using their energy or spiritual, whatever you want to call it. One and the same thing to me. And that's what you're dealing with. And when that energy comes back, they're being fully aware of themselves.
Okay. No, it makes absolute sense. And I prefer the way John looks at it and you look at it over the mental health idea. Absolutely. And then one of my other questions would be is how do you marry the idea, like the two concepts of like Dr. Jerry Marzinski, he talks about like dark entities and versus and then you guys in the Mace Method more like dark identities. How do you guys marriage the two? How do you look at those two concepts and how they relate? That's a tough question.
Like the way the way the Mace Method views what you call identities, and he said identities are just all the different roles that we play in life. You know what I mean? And in our introduction, when we're doing a session, you'll remember we have positive identities and we have negative ones. You know, the positive ones are, you know, the best example I always use if somebody's looking a bit, you know, not quite onto it. I said, you couldn't drive a car one day. Remember getting in it for the first time? Where's the clutch? Where's the gear stick? Where's this? And you're nervous as can be. But then when you've had your practice and you drive the car, you're driving the car, the red light goes on, your foot's already on the brake, but you're talking to someone who'll listen to the radio. And once you've built that, that's a positive identity. And he said, that's what identities are, just the roles that we decide to play in life. And unfortunately, from upsets, we accidentally create negative ones. And it's like you're another person. Like sometimes when I'm dealing with somebody, when they've got I'll just keep using it, I'm not good enough idea about themselves, I say to them, if they're not sure, I said, close your eyes. I said, you know, when we're upset in life, how often does that thought come up? And they said, it comes up a lot. I said, now go back, when you close your eyes, I said, and put your attention on that. And I said, do you change? Do you become a different person when that happens? Oh, definitely. I said, well, you stay where you are, keep your attention on the person you become and give me the negative traits. Explain, oh, it's angry, it's this, it's irrational, it's da, 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 da. And they, you know, and suddenly, you know, they're explaining, they're almost describing a person who's like close to them, but like a close neighbor. That's the way I see it. Okay. And then when you read those traits back to them, I said, what would that person look like? And bang, they've got some sort of an image. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's an up, doesn't matter what it is. Once the image sticks there and they see it, the game's on and they delete it. And after that, you can try to get them to say, I'm not good enough, and they just laugh at you. I'm plenty good enough. You know what I mean?
And is that the spirit, Jerry? Or John, is that the spirit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're getting, that's what John said. We are a unit of energy, you know, just like positive in it. And if we get too much negative, well, we're not doing too well in life. None of our identities, positive or negative, are doing too well. But once you get your energy back, you know, all right. A lady came to me and she had a 15-year-old going to this is a good example. May I tell you?
Please do. I love these examples.
Had a 15-year-old come to me and her daughter was going to a good college. She got a scholarship but she was being severely bullied because she was so good at what she was doing at school, you know. And so this young lady came and we went through the process with her and handled everything and that sort of thing. And when I got her to put her attention on the people who are bullying her, she said, it's not my problem, it's theirs, you know. And she just brightened right up. But at the end of the session, you may not have it, but we had an ad on television here for what's those? I'm thinking my memory's a bit tattered these days. One of the very big tires. I can't remember it now. What's very expensive? Anyway, Michelin. You've heard of Michelin's? Yeah. So I said to this little girl at the end of the session, with her eyes closed, how big do you feel? She said, oh, I feel as big as that Michelin man on telly. And he was like a monster. This ad was like a monster. So I said, that's the real you. So when she finished, she was a lovely young lady, did everything I asked her, very well mannered. And I thought, what can I say to this? This is early on in our procedures. I said, what can I say to this little girl? I said, listen, Missy, I was almost talking to her like I used to talk to my daughter. I said, Missy, I've got something I really want you to do after you finish here today. And she said, okay, what? You know, she's very obedient. I said, anytime you get a problem in future, I said, just stop for a minute. Remember the Michelin man, how big you are, and then you deal with the problem. And I bet you get better results. She said, okay, you know. And she went off, and her mother said, her and the bully girl turned out to be best friends by the end of the next week. And that's, wow. You know, when I called the mother, I said, how's she going? And she said, oh, her and that bully girl have now become best friends. You know, because she stopped reacting. See,
right.
And anyway, so I never saw her for a few months, and I'm a vitamin nut. So I went to her mother's house. Her mother was selling vitamins and giving a talk one night. So I went. The young lady was there, and I never talk about what we did in front of anybody. I finally was able to just get her aside on her own. I said, how you been doing since we did the work? She said, oh, anytime I get a problem now, I close my eyes for a sec. I'm the Michelin man. She said, I can do anything. She nearly bowled me over with the energy that came from that. And you know, a couple of months later, I saw a photo of her in the paper. They've raised all this money for charity or something, doing something. I said, that's my girl. So I tell a lot of the children to, about teenagers to try that, and it is, they just remember who you are and then you deal with it.
How often, John, do you see people coming back for a second session? It sounds like it's almost a bad business model. You can't keep, nobody's coming back for second rounds.
I'd say my estimations is about 75 or 80% always get fixed up in one session. But like, it depends. I've had a businessman once that he was getting divorced, and we handled him, and he did well. But then he was putting computer programs into big companies, and he had to get them to change their ideas. So he was getting what we call triggered quite often. And he was down in Melbourne, a fair way from me, and he'd send me a message. I've got a trigger. Can we handle it? I said, yeah. And he said, and I'd say, what time? And he might say 1 o'clock. So I'd get on. I used to do it on Skype, and a couple of times so I've called him when he said, hang on, I'm not quite there yet. He'd be walking down the street with his phone in his hand. And he used to go down to this park, and there was a bench with a tree all around it, a big bush, and he'd sit there and have his session. But like with him, it had to take about 10 or 15 minutes. It was just some feeling. So it's like we just kept tuning him up, if you follow me.
Right.
And he did that for a couple of years, finished up getting remarried again, and I haven't heard from him. I think he's doing fine now, and
Wow.
that sort of thing.
Wow. Are there any therapies you've seen that come close to the Mace Method?
No, it's unique as far as I'm concerned. I'm not skiting about that, but like, all the other ones that talk about it, and that's absolutely not necessary.
Are there any misconceptions you have, or anybody else has, about the Mace Method? Have you heard anything?
No, I remember John gave I think it might be in his book, but I can't remember. He gave a talk at the university. He wanted to share what he'd found. He wanted to give it to them,
Right.
And somebody stood up at the back of the class and said, that's impossible. You can't get rid of things permanently. And John's answer, prove me I'm wrong. Prove I'm wrong. That's the captain talking. No, I don't know of anything else that, I haven't looked at anything else that does it. There may be, but I haven't found it. We've trained quite a few people in Europe, in Sweden, England, Holland, and different places. They love it over there. The Swedish people absolutely love it.
Yeah, well, I can see that they're trying to actually get. I've seen from the Swedish government, it seems like they're actually allow their mental health or their spirit to be healed. They're looking for actual healing, and some of the techniques they have out there. They're very supportive of their community. It's a smaller community, some like United States, where it's more. They're more interested in a profit structure. It's not very profitable to have.
No, exactly.
Quick fixes with permanent change don't increase quarterly profit numbers. So please continue.
No, that's very sad when you think about that. But like the way I see it, with our practitioner, I said, well, you're just going to be doing more clients and having more and getting more referrals, and you won't have to do so much advertising.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
That's absolutely the way I see it. How was it when it started, John? Like when you guys first started with the Mace Method, like getting it out to the people, was it pretty much all referrals? It's always been referrals, I'm guessing, at this point. Is that?
No, referrals. No, I did some advertising, and there was a little paper on the East Coast here, and it was all about the different ideas. And it used to come out every 3 months. Every second article, I could do 700 words and then put an ad as well. And like that got me so many clients. People would ring up and they'd say, can you do this? I said, look, if you come and have your session, and at the end, if you do your part, and at the end you're not happy, I won't charge you. Oh, you're so confident I'm coming. So I stopped trying to explain it all over the phone. I just used to say that, and they'd come and get their session and get it done.
Wow. Yeah, that's smart.
But then honestly, occasionally you get people who are being constantly analyzing themselves, and if they're very strong at it, it's very hard to get past that. If they try to analyze themselves while you're doing it, the process won't run. And I've actually, my solution, when they start doing that, I'd say, hang on, open your eyes, we need to take a little break. I said, do you analyze yourself a lot? And I've had them say, oh, yes, I do it all the time. I said, has it ever solved a very serious problem? And I've never got a definite yes. I said, so look, can you leave the analyzer on this desk while we do this work, because it's going to stop this work working. I said, you can take it home afterwards if you want it. I do it that works. That worked for me. This is the way I've handled these problems. No, and when I have ladies sometimes, and you can see they're a bit touchy, some of them, like, and I say, look, I said, we have to get you to follow a procedure. I said, if you step off the path, I'll have to put you back on. I said, so if I'm being a bit bossy in the session, remember it's with love. You know what I mean? that work. I found things that work for me.
Oh, that's great. Are there any ages, like say when somebody is, you know, their 60s or 70s, are they still open to the Mace Method work the same? There's not like an age that
No,
it stops to hinder?
absolutely not. When you do that, Derek, you trigger me straight away. I had a lady that would have been up, one of the first ones early on up. She would have been in her 60s. And she'd been feeling guilty all her life. Her mother and dad, she told me afterwards, they divorced when she was 5 and she always thought it was her fault. She carried that through her whole life. And when we finished with it, of course, it was gone. You know what I mean? Now, people hang on to things accidentally.
No, that's beautiful. I found that a lot of times that people that are, I said, some of the veterans I've worked with, or you might say, I have some family members, I won't mention them right now, but there's some family members that I'm real close with that they've had some traumas when they were in their early teens that they've never been able to deal with. And they've tried lots of different therapies and different ways to adjust that energy that they went through at that time. And it's hindered their ability to be in relationships or to be happy. And so for me, I haven't been able to, I haven't showed them yet the Mace Method, but I'm excited about it, you know, and the fact that it can help anybody at any age. It just, for me, that's what else is there really? It's something that can help at everybody.
That's interesting that you've said that to me. Like with our procedure, we've got a written procedure that the people train on. And I'm not going to be asking the question. It's not secret, but I don't want to do any triggering. But there's a question we explain about feelings and you know, and everything's connected to upsets. And we put together, John and I put together a question that we ask people, and I can just about guarantee you, way up in the 90%, it finds the most basic upset they've had in their life, you know, and like we tell them before that, you know, we're not interested in what happened in an upset, who was there, whether you were there, who else was there. If you were 2 or 22, it doesn't make any difference. But when you ask this question with a lot of intention and have the person's attention, it triggers them straight back into it. When you think about it, that's the basic thing that's had them out of balance in their life. And that's caused a lot of other upsets as they've gone forward. That boys you just mentioned that had upsets when they were young and they kept having trouble with relationships, they were just getting triggered back to whatever it was. And when that's gone, when you do the basic, you might be handling, if someone old, you might be handling a couple of 100 upsets in one hit. That's the way I see it.
It's like a ripple effect. It's like a chain. You break the chain's no longer there as soon as you break one link. That's kind of how you look at it.
It's like getting the basic. That's why John called this causeism. We're handling with the basic cause of problems, you know. And it's like, if you ask people to think, they'll tell you about something that happened last week. But when you do that, and I've had people say, I said, when I asked the question, did you think of that? Have you had one of those type of upsets? There's a type of upset we say to them, and they said, yeah, oh yes, but that was many years ago. I said, well, keep that one. We've got to start with that. That's the most important one, and we guarantee them that that'll hold the 2 most negative aspects of their life, and that's the feeling and the decision that they made in the middle of the bad feeling.
So, John, do you find there's normally one big energy ridge normally for everybody, or? Normally...
Oh no.
Okay.
I can give you a bit of the history if you've got time. But please, when we started doing this, when we first put it together, I think I got going over on the East Coast, you know, and when I came home, I got to work, and he said, and he called me after a week or two. He said, we've got a problem. I said, what? He said, we fix these people. But he said, they go home and they get into relationship problems at home and get triggered. I'll have to put something together to do with relationships. So now we do the basic on somebody, the basic upset. And then when that's handled and they're feeling great about that, and we've got a way of testing that we've done it properly, and then go over and they say the next thing we do, we call it relationship repair. And there's a question we ask them that'll trigger their problem with relationships. And they handle the feeling to do with relationships, and anyone that's given them a hard time, like a bully or someone bad. And we handle, there's 2 sides of relationships. There's your side of it, and the other, there's two people in a relationship. So the relationship repair handles both sides. And then that's how relationship repair happened. And I remember John getting all excited about it, and he wrote it up and he sent it to me. And I can still remember doing the very first one I ever did. I had a nurse, and she loved what we were doing. and she loved nursing. And she called me back one time and she said, I'm going to leave the hospital. I said, what do you mean? She said, the matron, I do everything I can. There's no possible way to please her, you know, and I've had enough. I said, listen, we've just come up with something new. She lived a fair way from where I live. I said, you better come down on the weekend. We weren't doing things over the phone or Skype way back at the beginning. I said, I've got something special for you. So she came down and we did relationship repair. And of course, the matron came up and we handled that for her. And I called her back at the end of next week, or she called me. That's what we do with everyone. And I said, how you doing? She said, you'll never guess. The matron hasn't said a single word to me. She's still picking on everyone else. I'm not leaving my job. I love it, she said. You know, and so it's worth explaining. Relationship repair is like two people boxing in the ring. This is my analogy. If one of them steps out of the ring, what's the other one going to do? The fight's over.
Right.
See, my friend Jenny was her name. She was not getting triggered anymore by the matron. She was just doing a job, and because she wasn't getting triggered, like why do bullies bully children? Because every time they bully them, they get a result. If they suddenly don't get a result, they go and find someone else to bully. So that relationship helps young children with that are being bullied. The same thing. It's only relationship repair, and once you do it, and the person gets their energy back, the bully goes somewhere else.
So you're not even working on the other person, which is the most empowering thing about it. You're working on yourself, your own energy, which changes the response.
And the bully, what is it about? The bully's got an identity they don't like. So what is it about this person? You know, bullies, and what are they like? Are they're angry, they do this, they tell lies, they and up comes they run an identity on that person too. They do both sides. And then always we ask them, you know, how do you feel about that person now? And I love it, you know. And I say, imagine the bully's being so-and-so now. How are you responding? It's not, you know, I'm not, who cares? And then at the end of it, we always ask them, whose problem is it? And they say, oh, it's theirs, it's not mine, with a big smile. But the beautiful thing is that stays that way. Oh, I could go on all day.
Well, I'm gonna keep going you for a little bit here, definitely.
No, I'm fine. No, you're triggering me. You're triggering me on all this, all my pleasures. I had a lady once that came in June, in the middle of the year it was, and she'd had a lot of trouble with her mother, and her mother and her had fought their whole life just about. And we did the relationship repair and other things. And the mother lived in Sydney, and she lived up where I am, which is you know, about 1,500 k's difference. And she called me back after Christmas, and I said, how you going? I said, oh, good to hear from you. How you been doing? She said, you'll never guess. I went to the family get together at Christmas time. Mum and I never had a fight. We got on great the whole weekend. She said, that's never happened before. She didn't realize until she went and got with her mother that she'd had the win, as we call it. You know, and the relationship was fine, good as gold. I love remembering all those things.
No, that's great. Have you experiences with husband and wife then? I'm sure then, right? You've done those relationships as well?
Oh, yeah, there goes. You're doing a good job of triggering me, which is very good fun, by the way. A lady came to me and she had a daughter with 3 children. She screamed and yelled at all of them, and there was trouble around there with her husband too. There was trouble. So the mother talked the daughter into coming around having a session. We cleaned her all up, and somehow I talked to the mother. The lady called back in a week. That's right. And I said, how you doing? She said, my husband and the family thinks I'm on tranquilizers. I haven't screamed at anyone for the whole week. They wouldn't believe that she'd been counseled. They thought she was on drugs. Does that answer your question?
Oh, too well. Have you seen people that I see how somebody who's in therapy, if they got a hold of the Mace Method, that this would be a slam dunk for them, meaning this would be a go-to therapy for them. Have you seen people leave other therapies to try to be practitioners, or add that to their list? Because once you're exposed to it and you try it, I don't see a replacement. I don't see something that can work as fast or as effective.
No, well, that's and it depends. Like, it depends on the person. Are they trying to make money? They can make good money out of this, you know, but they just do a few extra people. But or they just want to treat people, like have them come in for a year or something. You know, those people are not going to be too happy with the Mace Method.
Well, I think something we talked about earlier is that you're not really doing what the hospital routine is, where you want to keep lots of customers and having them return often. You know, want lots of refills on medication and doctor visits. You're kind of eliminating all that excess money that could be going to the economy. So, but you're fixing them too fast. You're helping people
Yeah.
too quickly there, John.
No, exactly. It's like, but it's so much pleasure. Like you handle so many people and they get going. And but what you're doing is, like that lady with the children and her husband. What's that going to do to the children and the effect on the children in the next few years and the husband? Like it changes things. The same when you handle children with a bit of a problem, they go out into life. One of my goals has always been to try to get hold of kids, like at least when they're 17 or 18, and clean them up before they have their major relationship.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
So imagine them going in what I call clean and that sort of thing.
That's life-changing. That's absolutely life-changing. Yeah, you're giving them a chance. You're giving them a foundation to build a possible healthy life.
Yeah. See, people do have big, long relationships, 70, 80, 70 years and married, but you can bet that they're not carrying a lot of garbage with them.
Right.
Well, I've had some. No. Go ahead. Pardon me.
No, well, I want you to continue that story. I was just going to add that I found a lot of adults are just big kids. A lot of people they haven't grown up or they haven't dealt with a lot of their childhood, and they hold a lot. And I've met people that are really wealthy and they're celebrities and people that you think are on top of the world, and they have some really deep and dark days, and you're just like, wow, I wouldn't want those deep and dark days for all the money in the world if that's how I had to play the rest of my life.
Just because they're big shots doesn't mean to say they haven't got negative identities. It's like they come from upsets. Who hasn't had upsets in their life?
Right. Absolutely.
Very few people haven't had upsets in their life. That's where the things get created. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. John, have you had any sort of how do you say resistance from, say, the religious groups at all, or religion people at all? Because it seems like you skim the surface. You don't go into that at all, and you don't need to. But have you had anybody be restricted because of religious reasons at all, or?
No, I haven't.
The idea of spirit. If somebody was atheist, if they didn't have it, do they? I mean, they still can. They have the identity, so they have that to go to. Okay.
If they're out there operating in life, take it back to basics. Have they ever had any upsets?
Right.
I'm not being naughty because I have a faith myself, but I'm not being naughty. But like a lot of upsets can be caused by religion too.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't like talking about people. There's one particular religion. I've done a whole lot of work on those people, and I know they haven't told me. I know from what I dealt with. I've been the relationship problems are with an elder in the church, and they smile and they're happy as Larry, and they send their friends along, so they've got to be happy. But we don't. I don't want to know their private business.
Absolutely. I think that's like one of the best parts about the Mace Method. You don't need to, right? You don't have to go that deep.
No, and don't forget, if somebody's sitting there telling you something traumatic, they could be triggering you, the practitioner, too.
That's true.
And that's what John said. It's like it's free and easy for the practitioner. He's not getting into the heavy stuff. You might hear a few things occasionally. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
it seems like we're almost programmed too. So I'm sure you do get some spillover, because if anybody's gone to therapy, they normally, the first thing they do, they start telling you the story. They start explaining that identity to you. Is that not what you find?
Yeah. Well, they're telling the story of what happened to them, and often trying to blame somebody else,
Right.
and like that as an example, when people are trying to blame someone else, that man I told you about that used to ring me and sit in the park and get his sessions, I also tidied his son up for him at 19-year-old. And when he got the new mother, he was having trouble with her, the new mother. So I must have handled 7 or 8 feelings that he had when he thought about her, which is unusual for it to go that far. And I said to myself, something's wrong. So I said to him, close your eyes for a minute. I said, this problem you're having with your new mum is by chances, I said, is there any little part of it that you might be responsible for? I'm going to tell you verbatim. He said, oh, shit, yes. And I said, okay, we handled that one feeling and the problem was completely over. And since then, I haven't heard from him or his dad. He was as good as gold. And it's like, that's what John said. What we're really doing in the Mace Method is taking responsibility for our own actions. And that is what frees us,
Right. And the idea that the trauma you're not reliving the trauma. You're almost stuck in a pattern of the energy you live through that trauma. Is that how you're
stuck in the feeling?
Stuck in the feeling. Okay.
We say feelings control your life and mine. They control what you say or don't say. They control what you do or don't do, and they have a hell of a lot to do with your decisions in life and your attitude. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
of course, the negative ones, that's what John said, get rid of those and take control of your life again. That's what he said the Mace Method is for, to help you take control of your life and live your own dreams.
Oh, it really is. It really is.
Yeah.
And John, how do we get this into primary schools? How do we get this I mean, you've been at this for quite a few years. Have you ever been able to get any headway with any of the general public, or is it pretty much just in private sessions and referrals?
No, well, how I got to do children in the first place, have you ever heard of the Steiner schools?
Oh, yes, Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay. I had a teacher come from Steiner, one of the teachers got a referral and came to me for themselves. And then that one sent another teacher. And then they got onto me one day and they said, look, can you help children? We've got a few children that we can't seem to get going, no matter how hard we try. I said, well, I haven't, but I'll think about it. I said, but if they want to come, they'll have to come with their mother. And I'll check them when they come. They've got to want to come for themselves too, you know. And that's how I started handling children back about 2002 or 3. And we did quite a few. And that's when I put the procedure together to handle them. You know, I'm skiting, but I was so pleased about it. The little boy, his name was Luke. You'll never know him. But I remember his teacher ringing up. She said, I've got no idea what you did to Luke. She said, but he was absolutely the worst kid I've ever tried to teach. He's turned into the best kid now. When the other kids are playing up, they've got to go and sit next to him and try to be as good as him. You know, so, and that took about 30 or 40 minutes. You know what I mean? With that boy. And it's like, what will that do for his life? So I'm very much into what you said, schools, you know. John Mace's goal was to be a Mace practitioner in every school. When a kid's having a lot of trouble, instead of, you know.
How much would this affect humanity and society as a whole? I mean, it's a ripple effect of peace that we've never seen before. Humanity has never seen.
How much? Yeah, exactly. And how much would it save the government paying for all these drugs and everything, you know, and that sort of thing? If we fixed our soldiers up as soon as they came home, cleaned their slate, as John called it, cleaning your slate. If we did that with the soldiers when they come home, give them a couple of hours work, you know, what would that be worth to the country?
I mean, these are all things that it changes the entire world and how we look at it. And I before having this information, we were trying other things. We were focusing more on the physical side, you know, staying healthy, yoga, breathing exercises, qigong, just different things to make the body's energy be better dealing with. You know, we didn't look at dark entities, but we were just calling dark thoughts or dark thought patterns. You know, so we would just try to change the physical side because we had no real resolution or no idea how to make permanent change on the soul side, the spirit side. And the only other thing that they were getting from the hospitals was just medication. So, you know, we did what we could, but this kind of information for me, it just shattered the parameter of thinking I had about what's possible.
Exactly. What Jerry's done, the way he speaks, and apparently he's what we call an opinion leader. People go on his opinion. And like, I'm just so sad that John Mace didn't meet him. John Mace would have been so grateful for him. John was a very technician, you know, the way he thought his way through problems was quite amazing. And, but like promotion wasn't his big, you know, that wasn't his game. We've all got given abilities, you know, right. And like, him and Jerry getting together, I think they would have got the job done.
I think they would have got along really well. And I think this book and this idea causes it should be a philosophy that you get in college. I mean, and it definitely should be in a different version. I think at from elementary school on, from middle school on. But as I loved his idea of the philosophers and taking the best of all the worlds, because they all had weak points and strong points, and he found a way to mesh them together to create. Is it too much to say another philosophy? Like, it's a different way to look at life.
Yeah. Well, I call it a closer look.
Okay, I like that. You've had more chance to look at it, so I get it. That definitely sounds good.
Get a bit closer. Well, the big thing, that's, you know, we thought, you know, we were calling it was MIP when we started, mental imagery procedure, and then somebody came up with the Mace energy method. But then he said, no, what we're doing is we're handling with the cause of problems. So the Institute for Training is called the Causism Institute. That's the training institute. The Mace Method is how we handle people. and that sort of thing. And since Jerry spoke, the people here in America are getting overwhelmed. I'm in my 90s now, so I don't do any training anymore. I did lots and lots, and the people I trained, they're doing great. And I still look after them, and I go to Zoom meetings, and they often ask me, and a bit of experience you can share with them, little points here and there. And that's my job these days.
Well, it seems like you got all the best stories and you got all the experience that we're looking for, because a lot of the information, like I said, with Jerry and with his, he has a lot of people that came to him, and I did a couple interviews with him and got some of his information now, and the response was huge. I was getting, hundreds of thousands of people reaching out and watching or getting involved in this content. And the response in itself, I couldn't stop getting enough. I had to keep looking into whatever he was doing. And his main therapy, though, his main modality to help people with these dark patterns, these dark thought patterns, was the Mace Method.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get past how simple it was. Just.
Yep. He's training now, I believe, or he's trained. I'm not sure.
I think he's trained. I think he's trained. I think he's definitely helping other people with it.
Yep. And Cherie, the girl, one of my very early trainees, is sort of more or less running the show now. And Cherie's training him. A friend of mine's training him, and he contacted her in the first place.
Yeah, she's wonderful. She's the one that kind of helped me get to you, and I'm gonna have to get to her next, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get this information in short little bits to as many people as possible.
Oh, wonderful! Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Anything I can do to help, you just need to email me and let me know.
I will, John. This is a huge one right here. Just having this conversation, the stories that you've had, your experiences. A lot of the comments I get from people when I put this content out is, I'm not the only one like this. I'm not the only one dealing with these dark thoughts, these dark thought patterns where I can't get out of it. They feel stuck, and then there is no option, or they think it's just them, and that they're, then they go to a therapy session, they just repeat that identity, and it's more suffering. It's more, it's more repeating and confirming that their thought pattern is correct. So, like I said, John, the stories about the relationships, all ages, the school kids. I mean, I can't thank you enough for your time.
No, you're more than welcome.
And
I'm still till the day they put me in a box. I'm trying to help John reach what he wanted to reach. He just wanted to share it with the world. He wasn't looking for $1 million, he just wanted to see it get out there and get done. That was his goal. But the young people that are doing it now, they have to charge, because that's how they earn their living. But
are you starting to see more of an influx from the United States? Are you starting to see from other countries?
Definitely. Ever since Jerry spoke, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Very good. What state are you in, please?
I'm in Texas. I'm in Oklahoma.
Whereabouts?
Right now, actually, I'm in Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City. That's in Texas.
No, I'm in Oklahoma City. But we were in North. I was by Dallas before.
I lived in Dallas from
Really?
1979 till about 69 till about 71, I think.
Oh, nice.
And then I went to Tucson. Then I went to then I finished up out in San Diego. Loved it.
Yeah, San Diego. You really were getting all the spots.
I've been around. And I worked on the tuna boats. It was a way of earning very good money. I'm into food. I understand food very well. Was my and that way I could work and then spend time doing some study, not worried about earning money.
Oh, smart man.
So I finished up coming back to Australia, but I spent quite a few years over that way and enjoyed it. I could have been a citizen. They sent me the thing and I said, no, I think I'm going home.
Well, you got family, I'm guessing, in Australia. You got family and friends in there, right? So
Yep, exactly. And that sort of thing. So so anytime that you need anything or you think I can help, I'm more than willing.
Well, I appreciate it, John. I appreciate your time. And I think, like I said, I definitely will be taking you up on that offer.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. So, I often think of Dallas, downtown Dallas, they used to say. But for the first couple of weeks I was there, I couldn't understand anybody except the West Indian girls in the bank, because they speak very correct English. I want apples, you know what I mean? But then I tuned in after a while.
Yeah, you got to slow it down a little bit, and you'll get there. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. So I definitely had to make the transition from fast city boy talk to slow it down, and then get a little that twang in there.
Yeah.
But when you went to San Diego, did you understand them a little bit better when you got to California?
Oh yeah. Well, by that time I've been there a few years. You know?
So you're already used to it.
No, it's hey, a little experience of mine. I had a lady call from Germany one time for a session. You know, we arranged it over the internet, and when she came on, and I said to her, you know, I thought, I hope she speaks English. You know, I'm no good on German. and I said to her pretty quickly, I said, are you okay with English? She said, my English is fine. I'm not too sure about my Australian. She put me right in my place. She was a West Indian lady living in she had beautiful English, you know.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, absolutely.
I had to watch myself because our English is a bit tattered at times.
Oh yeah. No, I haven't been to Australia yet, but I've been wanting to go. I've heard amazing things. My cousin just came back. He went to school out there not in Brisbane, Melbourne. What is it? Yeah. He went to university over there, but he just said it was gorgeous, and the people were really nice, and he really liked the community there was pretty good. I mean, it was different from we're coming from Los Angeles. It's not as they're not as friendly. How about that? Let's say it like that way. They're a little rougher.
No, Americans are well thought of, and I was very lucky when I went to America. Australians, you know, as soon as you're talking, you're one of them Aussies, they'd say, you know. And I say yes, but. Like I dealt with Americans selling newspapers as a kid. The Americans were in our country during the war,
right?
And I had a lot to do with them. I had, you know, and that was one of the reasons I think I finished up going there. I just got on with them so good. They were so kind to us kids. They were the only source of chewing gum and chocolate. It was not available. All of it went to the soldiers in World War II. And you know, I remember one of your boys came out and I said, any chance of getting a packet of chewing gum? If you've got a chance, please. About a week later, he turned up with a carton.
Yeah, it sounds like it, right?
I said, I can't take all that. Yes, that kid. He said, you know, they just call you kid here. Grab it. He made me a millionaire at school. There was no other chewing gum. I was the source of chewing gum. I had so many friends so quickly. You know?
Oh, that is so beautiful story. Yeah, like I said, I love those stories. That's.
Oh well, there is one more too. I don't know if you know much about World War II. There was a German big shot called Rommel. He was the general, and when they went into Egypt and Palestine, they just went through there, beat the English, the Poms, the New Zealanders, the Australians, and there was a place called Tobruk where our soldiers were there for 9 months, like a siege. And anyway, when I was selling papers, one day they finally started to beat Rommel, and the great big headlines were Rommel with big German. It meant Germany on the run, and like I probably sold double the newspapers that night.
I could imagine.
But one of the American boys came along, and the papers used to cost 2 pennies in those days, and 10 shillings, like your $1 bill, that was 120 pennies. So he gave me the 10 shillings, like the 120 penny note, and he said, "Keep the change, kid," you know. And I chased it. I said, like my mum taught me to be very good mannered, and I run after. I can't do that. My mum wouldn't let me do that. I've got to give you a change. I'd never heard of it. Never been tipped. I've got pennies before, but I had a big Hessian bag with about 50 papers on my shoulder, and he picked me up and he spun me around a few times. He said, "You don't understand, kid. That means I'll be going home. You know, you keep the goddamn money." And he walked off. So he doubled my wages for the week.
Oh, man. You must have been popular. You've got all the candy, the chocolate, you're making money, and you've got all the news. You got all the new information too. You must have been real popular as a kid.
That was very good education for me. You know, having a business.
Yeah.
And to say, "Paper, sir," and come occasionally to say, "I can't read." I said, "Well, you could look at the pictures. Shut up, you cheeky little so-and-so."
And then you became a tradesman? What were you doing? Construction? What did you end up doing?
No, I was a butcher.
A butcher. Okay, that's a good trade too.
I started in 45, and I had my own businesses for years.
You sounded like an entrepreneur.
Until I went off and did that council studying, and that changed my life.
So you're cutting meat, you're butchering up, you're working hard every day, and then you find the Mace Method, or you find a different kind of therapy.
I found the counseling that started in 1966. 1966. I did 20 odd years in the butcher shop, and then I decided to go off and I picked up a very good method of teaching communication. So we have TAFE colleges here, like after school, there's places where apprentices go and get extra training,
right?
Like a TAFE college.
Yeah.
So I finished up. I've done quite a few years part-time teaching communication and how to handle people and that with people. So, you know, a big love of mine.
So obviously you're good with people, and then you start to you run to John Mace. You're on a ship. You're tuna fishing. Like how did that
Oh
transpire?
no, I met John Pace in Perth. I knew his brother pretty well, and when John finished with the ships, he came to Perth. You know, and we met. That was just before I went to America. You know, it was him that virtually got me to go in one way or another, and then we stayed in touch. His brother, they used to run little courses and do things there, and that's how I got to meet John, and we just got on right from the beginning. You know what I mean?
And so they went to he was in Dallas too, right? You were saying he was in Dallas, Texas for a little bit, John?
Yeah, he did some study in Dallas, Texas in about 95. He was there for quite a few months. He just thought he might pick up something. And he said, it's good what they're doing, but they haven't found what we're looking for. I remember him telling me. But I was interested in what he said, so I decided, when I retired, I decided to go over there too and spend a couple of months. I spent about 3 or 4 months there.
And then when did he find it, John? When did he find?
No, then I went back and I lived on the east coast and I went over to Perth, and I got in my car and drove over there. It's about 4,000 Ks, and stayed over there and like showed him. And then he found, and then I spent about 8 or 9 months with him. And then while the Mace Method was created, and then came back to the East Coast. But we stayed in touch for a long, you know, we're in touch all the time.
And at that point, then everything changed, obviously. At that point,
oh yeah. Yeah, we added things. There's so many different aspects. And like, I don't know if you've got another minute or two, but like, one of the things I learned in some of the study I did was like, everything we do in life, we have to be able to start, we have to be able to persist, we have to be able to complete things, you know? And if any of those are a bit weak, you're not going to be too successful in life. All of those things. Well, and so I had a client once I was having trouble with it. So I ran that, I explained that to them, and then ran each one of those things. And then the girl came good then. She wasn't very good at persisting, but her strength came back. When you run the bad feelings off, the strength to persist comes back. And the same as making decisions, you know. John, pardon me, I had start, persist, complete. John added, what about decisions? You've got to make a decision before you start. So he was thrilled. But so we've got a thing now we call the activity procedure we run on people, and it completely handles procrastination and whatever. And everyone you run it on, their production goes up straight away, because all the negative bits on any one of those parts, you get your strength back again. You can start, you can persist, you can complete, you can make decisions, you're not procrastinating. And so that's another whole aspect. But, you know, when somebody's studying, getting them to clean up their study, they start to get honours with the results at uni and that sort of thing. We've had a lot of experience, Derek.
Wow. So you just saved the best for last right there. You just...
No.
I mean that. Well, look, if you could heal the trauma, and then you could actually help people with, because a lot of people, I mean, I probably have, I'm in that category too, where there's certain strengths I have and certain weaknesses. But if you could get the weaknesses out, I mean, you can spin the wheel faster. You can go faster. You can be more productive in your life if you can work on those weaknesses. And you're saying that you can use the Mace Method to find out which one of those are holding you back.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's very easy to ask somebody to do with making a decision, starting, persisting, or completing. What's your strongest? What are you best at? What's your strongest point, do you reckon, for you?
Starting. Yeah.
Okay. Well, like John Mace said, if you've got a strong point of making a decision, persisting, or completing, which is your weakest point?
The persisting.
Yeah, well, see, that's what we start with. And when you get your processing, you ask for the activity procedure. They would handle that and then clean up the other three as well. It's the simplest. I'm sorry, we've had so many people say it can't be that simple, but I'm sorry. I said I'm very sorry, but it is.
You got to make it more complicated, John. Oh, the fact that you could help that quickly, and I mean, yeah, you're.
May I don't know if you've got time. I'll send you a couple of my favorite stories about that people wrote to me.
Please do. I would.
One lady, she did a regular session. I can remember she said, what was her decision about herself when she was young? I'm not important. And that it caused her always to put other people first, you know, when they say that. But then she went on and we did that. She's got the biggest business now, handling people with their business finances. And you know, I wrote of and another lady that was having trouble doing her university course, and she gave certain dates. We did certain things. I'll send it to you. It's a bit of reading, but if you're interested, I'll send a couple of things.
I would love it. I would love it.
Yeah, that'll give a good explanation about that.
And you've got I've only seen a couple, but the Mace Method guys that we have in the United States, they're doing all the above. They're doing
well, there's a basic, what we do with the training now, there's a basic learning to do what we call the ruin, the basic thing that's out in your life. We call it your ruin or the bane of your life. And you handle that, and then you do relationship repair. And if they've got any other little problems, there's a way of any bad feelings, we get them to scan and clean up. And then, so a new practitioner would learn to do that. And once they get nice and good and get very smooth at handling feelings, then there's a little course that they do. We call it the advanced course. And then they learn to do the activity procedure and 2 or 3 other little things. You know what I mean? There's some other little procedures. Once you use the basic data, you can start to use it everywhere.
Do I have to fly out to Australia if I wanted to learn all this stuff?
No. Cherie trains. Most people part-time, they get fully trained in about 6 months.
Really?
You only spend a certain amount of time each week with a practice, and then there's 5 sections in the course, and you do the first section, and then Cherie got me to, when you do the first section, I studied it all at one time, and then I done a bunch of questions, and then you got to answer a bunch of questions, just not hard ones, just to make sure you've got hold of the basics. You follow me?
I'm following.
And if there's one little thing wrong, well, then you go back and clean that up, and then when you've answered those, then you can go on to section 2, and the same thing happens in section 3, section 4, and then section 5 is all about the practical doing it, and then you're doing sessions and recording them, your trainers listens to them and gives you little hints and gets you to go until you can do sessions. And once you can do sessions successfully, then you graduate.
Oh man, now you got now you triggered me, John. You triggered me, and
well, life's a 2-way flow. You've done a bit on me, I've done a bit on you.
It's true. It really is true. Yeah. Well, I think that with the I spent a lot of time with the vets, and we're doing all these other therapies, and I'm just sitting there going like, what? This is the most powerful tool I've ever come across. It's so quick. It's so impactful. And I don't know. I only found 2 other Mace Method guys that are around, but I could, and Jerry, I'm already referring people to Jerry, but maybe I need to continue this path here and continue my education. So I can continue
Cherie's a good tough trainer. She'll get you trained.
She's been a sweetheart so far, but I'm sure as soon as she finds out I want to learn, she'll change her hat a little bit. And
yeah, put the right hat on. Yeah. Yeah, I remember her coming, and like when she had her first session, as soon as she had a session, she said, I've been trying to handle that all my life. She said, I want to learn this stuff. Can I learn? You know, I can still remember her. She trained in about 2002, I think it was. So she's been going quite a while now.
Now, is Cherie the one that wrote the book with Jerry? Or was that a different Cherie? Did Cherie write the book with Jerry Marzinski? Did they write they wrote a book together, or was that a different Cherie?
No, Cherie, there's only one Cherie that I know of. What book is that are you talking about?
The book that Jerry Marzinski wrote the name of the book now.
No, I don't think so. I don't think Cherie.
It's a different one. What's her last name? What's Cherie's last name?
You've been talking to her, haven't you?
I do. I haven't have information.
Hatfield.
Oh, here it is. No, different one. You're right. Different one. Okay. Different one.
Yep. No, she hasn't nothing to do with that.
Okay, and then but these are our books. These are our public. This is what if somebody wants to learn more. This is where you send them. Grab a book.
Yeah. Well, if they're interested and they're a bit, want to decide, have a read of the book, see what you think.
Okay.
And they can buy the book like that, or they can read it on the internet if they want to.
You guys are the real deal, John. I don't know how you did it.
Yep. John wrote one of his early books. One of the book before those 2 there was called "Don't Think About an Elephant." That was the name of the book.
Yeah, exactly. The concept you can't. It's impossible.
You can't not think about something.
That's right.
Not just elephants. And if you've got a feeling that's hanging around, you can't not think about it.
Yeah.
So people say, "What's the use of that?" I said, "Well, don't think about an elephant. Try your best, and then they wake up.
Oh, John. Well, you've been an
John was just
absolute.
trying to get his point over.
Ah, man. How old was John when he passed? Mace.
About 94, I think, 93 or 4.
Okay, so he kept it pretty good in health. That's great.
Yep. He finished up with shingles, and that comes from when you've had something when you're young, it reappears. He had a bit of a thing on his head he was always complained about.
Right.
But there's another fact. Using the Mace method, you can often handle aches and pains on people, and they'll disappear.
Okay, you're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to go on that one a little bit. You can't just leave me with that.
All right.
Elaborate, sir.
One of my good mates. I lived down in the country here for a while back, and down in New South Wales instead of Queensland. And there was 2 lots of steps to come up one lot of steps, go on a thing, go for another lot of steps. And this man, I'd met him I go dancing a lot. That's my big passion. I did what they call ballroom dancing when I was younger, and it got stopped because of the COVID, and I'm still upset. But however, when he came up those steps, this guy, Colin was his name, he could hardly get up the steps. He was battling, like he had to hold the side and come up the steps. And I did the regular session on him, and then he had this, and I said, because he was a mate of mine from the dancing, and I said to him, like, what's wrong? And he told me he had this problem, and I said, have you ever had an accident with it? Oh yes, when I was young. I said, close your eyes. So we ran all the feelings off of it. And then until, ran the feelings, focus on it. Does that bring up an unwanted feeling? And then you run the unwanted feeling. We probably run 2 or 3 feelings off of it for him. And then I said, when you think about that foot, how's it? He said, it seems all right. He said, it can't be. I said, he got up and started walking around the offices. He said, oh my God, I can walk. I'll tell you with total honesty, he walked down them stairs like a teenager when he left that day. He became a very good mate because of that.
I can imagine. Was this a one-off, or have you tried this with other people?
No. If somebody's got aches and pains, we run the feelings off it. And there's not perfect, but it does a lot of very, very good work. It gets people back on top of things, and right. Plenty of them, the bad feeling somewhere or the ache or pain disappears completely. If they've had an accident, they're still resisting the feeling of the accident. It's quite simple when you think about it, though, Derek. And you run off that feeling. So the way that we work is when somebody closes their eyes and focus on something. I said, when you think about that, focus on that. Does that bring up an unwanted feeling? Oh yeah, like a drop feeling. And then you just run the feeling, and that's what's holding it in place.
This is so multidimensional. You keep just triggering my brain more and more. It's payback, isn't it? Because it's really starting to take a hold.
I'm going to be rude. That's not your brain. We're triggering you, the person.
That's true. That is. Oh man, keep going. Keep going.
Your brain only does what you tell it.
That's right. That's so many bad. Yeah, there's so much bad information here. I got to wipe it out. And the only way I can do it is get some John Avery time. So you're talking about healing relationships, healing relationship with self, healing your ups and downs of how you take care of your business, and physical pain.
Yep, exactly. Well, it's taken control of your life.
It really has.
That's what it's all about. Anything that's sitting there, I mean, bodies do get injured, and physically, you know what I mean? Some tendon might break or something, but a lot of it is what you're resisting. You're holding the feeling in place accidentally by resisting it. As soon as you take the resistance off, it's gone, or at least a hell of a lot better.
Right.
By the way, you're going to get it now. I'm going to give you a headache, and it also handles compulsions.
Why are you doing this to me, John?
Yeah. Well, you asked for it.
I did.
No, I'm sorry. No, but think about it. It's a feeling,
Right.
This is the last story. A lady walks in one day, you know what I mean? What's the problem? And she'd lost $46,000, a single old lady, $46,000 at the poker machines. Ooh. I said, oh my God, and so we did her ruin and relationship, and then we handled the feelings connected, got her attention on that, run the feelings on that. She called me back at the end of the week. She said, oh, when we did that, I was frightened because I've got so many friends down the club. She said, I can go to the club now, play a few games of Keno. I don't know if you have that in America. With Keno, she said, I've got not the slightest idea that I want to go near the pokies. I'm just not interested anymore. And she said, I can still see all my friends and have lunch and have a couple of dollars on the Keno.
So somebody with, how about with drinking then? So drinking is a compulsion, right? So if somebody wanted to have one drink,
Anything.
anything, you son of a
Smoking.
gun, you
If
son of a gun.
somebody wants to give up smoking, they can. But you've got to check them out. You've got to check them out. Say, if somebody said, I want to give up smoking, and I've had people walk in, why do you want to give it up? My wife doesn't like it. I said, that's not good enough. I said, listen, go and take a break. The door's never closed. When you decide why you want it for you, come back. And I've had them come back 6 months later, which is very bad for my health. And this, okay, sit down, boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean?
Good.
You can't get anything to do anything that they don't want to.
Right. It has to be
They've
the
got to
person.
want to do it for themselves first, you know?
Right. That makes a difference. I get it. I get it. Oh man, the levels on here, John. The levels.
Well, when you think about it, you're dealing with the cause of problems, not the whole technical bull dust behind it. Just what's the cause, none of these problems people want. So it must be something they don't want.
You're too logical and practical. It hurts. It hurts the mind.
You're lucky you didn't meet John Mace, because he was about 10 times more than me.
Oh boy. Oh man. Now I'm gonna, I don't know, probably have to read these books again, and I'm gonna have to talk to Sherry. Oh Lord.
John used to get after me. I never had a computer for a lot of years. And he said, for God's sake, get a bloody computer so I don't have to send you everything in the mail, all the new stuff. You know, as we get an update, we write it all up and it goes to all the practitioners. And so him and this Cherie that you've been talking to, they both had Apple computers. And I forget what I had those days, but it wasn't. And I didn't have, and they kept saying, why don't you get an Apple? I said, they're too bloody complicated. I don't like computers. You know, I just like them for what I can do. So the first time we ever had a Skype session where we can all the three of us could talk together, you know, I was the only one that could connect them. So I told them both they needed to get rid of their Apple computers and get a proper one. So I've had a few wins too. There you are.
It sounds like you pretty much had a wonderful time with them. I mean, it really seems like you guys have made a family out of this whole thing. And
absolutely.
It's been what, like 25 years then the Mace Method's been kind of in effect.
It really got going about 1997, 98.
So I mean, it's relatively
when
new.
I came back from America, it was about 97 when I came back and drove over there. And then like in that next 8 or 9 months, that's when it got started, going. You know, and it just sort of grown. And, you know, as far as the activity procedure, that was my creation. And John said he knew about that data, but he hadn't thought about. He said, I can't bloody think of everything. He said, if you think of anything good, and he tells all the practitioners, if you think of anything good, tell me, you know?
Right.
So we all share what we've had little things that we share. That's what I like to get on with the younger practitioners now and help them, you know, get them to widen up their view that they can handle anything as long as they keep to the basic procedure and don't change it.
Yeah, no, I can see it. All right, John. No, you're creating a monster. You're a saint, my brother. You're a saint, and I'm gonna have to talk to Sherry and thank her for making this happen, and thank you. And I'll be bugging you again.
Anything else, or you know, you just need to ask me, and we'll get together. Sorry about the mess up the other day. I was sitting here waiting to come on, and I could have been on talking to you.
That's all right. I can say it's supposed to work out the way it did, and we had this chance right now. And like I said, I couldn't be any more happy about it. So I appreciate you, John.
Thank you very much, and thanks for letting me. I've been called a Mr. Have a Chat a few times, so thanks for letting me be.
No, you're great. You're great. Don't be surprised if I come back for a part 2.
No. Okay, wonderful. Great to meet you too, and all the best. And if you get into this game, you're getting into something where you can have a hell of a lot of fun and a lot of satisfaction.
I'm getting that from what you haven't even said, and just your energy, John. And like I said, I appreciate you for that. You sound like a wonderful guy. I appreciate it.
I'll pop those couple of things you might like to read about that activity business, and if you get some processing, then tell them you want the activity procedure.
Okay. I'm gonna have this headache to go away, but as soon as it does, I'm gonna have to start it up. All right, John.
Okay. Have a good day and all the best, mate.
You too, buddy.
Very, very pleased to chat. Bye-bye.